Okay. Good morning. This is day number 159 of making the videos describe a day or thought in life of schizophrenic. My name is Dominic, and I'm on day 17 of these videos. I describe where I call myself schizophrenic rather than targeted individual. On day 45, I express why I make these videos in the first place, and on day 138, I give the symptoms that I experience as a schizophrenic. I don't believe I'm diseased or crazy, but that I am subject to what NATO terms cognitive war and what the Indian Joint Chief of Intelligence describes as neurostrike weaponry. Uh, I write little thoughts every day to give insight into the thinking of someone who's developed schizophrenia in their 20s. I'm now 40, and I'm about to be 41 actually in 2 weeks. And I also experienced probably schizophrenia in my childhood. If I look back on it, some things that were going on. So, but like I say, I think it's a reality to be experienced. Okay, so I don't read as much anymore because I'm in library classes. So if you saw these earlier videos, you would notice I was reading a lot of different books and stuff. I'd like to get back into the books. I'm reading a few books now, but I don't really take stuff out of the books as much as I was before. I just have thoughts that are related to the books, but sometimes they're related to more just in general. So what I was going to start off with today was to talk about. Let me see if I can pull up my thought. Okay, yeah. I saw this news clip of Elon Musk saying that he was in favor, or he would really like for someone to bring back Jurassic Park. This has been floated around for some time, but I had this thought. I was like, maybe we could send Elon Musk back in time to the Jurassic period rather than bring the dinosaurs back to us here. And that's kind of a mean thing to say, so I don't like to be mean, but I had that thought, and so I share. Okay, so speaking of Elon Musk and like billionaires, and he's going to be a trillionaire. So the question is, what can we do about the disparity in wealth between people? And there's a 5% tax on wealth in California being proposed. And my thought on that is that I don't know. Philosophically, I'm for it. Philosophically, I think that more resources of the system, if you have a system of resources allocation that you have when you have, and right now the system is confined like this because it's a money system. So if we're going to keep the money system, then somehow the money that's all over here should start going to the people over in the bottom that need it the most, and that's what I'm for. And but so I'm philosophically for a tax on billionaires, but I don't know politically if it will work in specific locations like New York or California because they're part of a greater nation where people find residences. They can take up residence somewhere else, and they could skirt the tax law, and so they could just pool resources from your state. So on a local level, I don't know. I don't know if it will work on a local level as it's intended to work. Probably it will work to some degree because not every single billionaire is going to leave California or New York because there's a lot of money to be made there. And philosophically, 5% tax conceivably on people that make over $1 billion seems like I'm not really philosophically opposed to it because if they're not philosophically opposed to people dying in the street, why should I be philosophically opposed for them losing their hoarded wealth? So I don't if that's the game we're playing as human beings, then okay, then If you don't want to devise a system where people are not starving, or people are not starved, but people are not dying without health care, or people are not dying in the cold on the streets, or baking on the street, then I'm gonna side with those people over you. So philosophically, that's why I think it's fine. But politically, I don't know that it's all that good. And maybe you even need to do something world government wise, internationally, to some degree, to stop people from skirting collective agreements by taxes and stuff. But that's my thought on that. So I think Gavin Newsom came out against it, and I guess I kind of understand why he did, because but he's also playing like a game for presidential nomination and stuff. So I don't know. I saw that Bill Clinton was in San Francisco meeting with Gavin Newsom, so that's kind of interesting. I guess Gavin's trying to take up space in the Clinton wing of the party. I guess it's like Clinton, Pelosi. I guess the three wings are Clinton, Pelosi, and Obama. So we'll see what happens. Chemtrail weather. Okay, so the skies were really active here the last 2 or 3 days or whatever, and I noticed that they're spraying these trails on the planes and stuff. And I know people say like chemtrails or weather manipulation or chemicals or something, and I did notice that once they were flying all over the place with all these planes and stuff, there was these clouds that kind of formed simultaneous almost to it, and like kind of right afterwards. And I've noticed that before in the sky, and I know other people haven't. So it was really active sky, and then we had these clouds, and I started thinking like maybe there's, because of what's going on with Iran, that there's maybe like under a thing of like a weather war, where somebody associated somewhere in the world is trying to create a weather event in California, maybe even for fire or something. And so we're kind of dry. We had a dry March, and so maybe they're trying to burn places down again or something. And so I started thinking like they put the clouds in the sky to dampen the heat from the sun. And so I know that that was like an idea proposed by, I think, Bill Gates or somebody like a while ago. And so I think they let these things out like, oh, this billionaire proposed this or whatever. And then it's just like, well, maybe it's already going to be implemented, and that's how they introduced it to the public. And so that's what I was thinking on that. That's a thought that I had today. My dad, I had a schizophrenia feedback on the TV. I get tons of that, but I'll just go one for instance. My dad was saying it's stink break because he's being funny, and he was calling spring break stink break. And on the TV, we saw a news story that showed that there was this seaweed, stinky seaweed, that washed up on the beach. And he had not seen that story or anything. He was already saying that. And then about half hour later, we saw the story on the news. And so that's like an example of like kind of news feedback, or like maybe even controlling your mind to say something like a stink break. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing that in the thing. So it's like maybe somebody like planted the thought in our mind, or in his mind or something. And so now I know there's something called semantic priming, or so I don't know how exactly that happens, but yeah. All right, so I'll get something a little bit more serious than stink break, but I'm fairly certain that there is an intertemporal. Sometimes I think, and I'm fairly certain there's multiple agencies following me, or there's multiple uh, intergalactic things following me and stuff, and controlling me and stuff. And so I think that potentially there's an agency that's intertemporal that decided to wage a war on me to undermine my social standing and they tried to make me schizophrenic, jobless, and living with my parents, all because I had rejected competition and violence as being central to uh, determining as things that determine one's worth or value. And the people that run America desperately need to make violence and competition central to their sense of worth and value. Okay, and if violence and competition is not central to the youth's worth and value, then the whole thing falls apart. I don't need people to value me personally. Like, if people don't want to value me, I don't need them to. But because I'm on a feed that's 24/7, like some sort of weird reality show, and it's dehumanizing and devaluing me in and on itself, and because I'm being devalued, certain truths about reality are being devalued because of that. And so like I say, I believe it was like an intemporal agency that decided to wage this war on me or whatever. And so I've expressed that a little bit in other ones, but I had the thought yesterday, and I was like, I think that quite often, and I don't share it, but I'll just share it today. Okay. A little bit in relation to this is like we are conditioned to be human doings rather than human beings, and we're human doings who productively trash the planet rather than assess how we could be human beings living in accordance or we could collectively do things in accordance with life. And so I started thinking that, I was like, it's kind of weird that there's it's a everything is about being productive. Like, what are we're producing, what for what end? It's good to be a little bit productive with your creative self or whatever, and I'll get to that in a second. But like, uh, producing what to for what? you know, uh, I'm not one for duality. Looking at the world as a duality, but maybe I like the Gnostics say, if they're if the God did create something for a duality, he's a little bit crazy because there's poly, polymorphism. I don't know what. There's many. There's many. I think it's a many-headed beast that we are in the universe or whatever. And so uh, I think there's something to admiring creation and beauty. Okay, so like I'd say like there's maybe if there's something to duality, I'm not like for duality, but maybe there's something to admiring creation and beauty. And then on the flip side, you have the other thing that maybe this is for the purposes of leading us away from destructive ends. Okay, so like things that we do to create destruction or destroying people, society, life. And so if we are exercising our creative capacities and our capacities to bring about or admire beauty, then maybe that's more the path we need to go rather than destroying. And so you just take a look at I'm Italian, but like I went to Italy and it was like it's something like they didn't destroy everything that they had created, and it birthed life for 1,000 years. And so it's like the idea that like something is beautiful if you take the time and you create it, then you have an admiration for it. Now they have ruins and stuff, but I don't know. I was just thinking like uh the idea that we have this idea that like you make stuff and you make it cheap and then you destroy it later for something else or whatever. And it's okay to build new, like that's creative process or whatever. That's good. But I was just like the idea that you would create something that lasts for 1,000 years is something I don't know if we're doing that anymore. In but just getting into the idea of like creative destruction or whatever. So I was just thinking that those are my thoughts today on that, and so uh, that's about all I had to say on that. But I was just thinking like if we exercise creative capacities and our capacities to admire beauty, and that can lead us away from destructive ends when it's not necessary. Destructive ends should be very tightly controlled and only done when it's completely necessary. And so that gets into like when we do create, maybe we should create with a mind for sustainability and stuff. And so that's what I was thinking today. It all leads you there once you think about it. I know there's millions of people thinking about that way. So I had that thought today, and so that's where I lie on things. I saw that Luka Doncic is saying it's easier to score 30 in the NBA than it is in the EuroLeague. And I didn't read the article, but it was a headline. And I was thinking that one of the reasons it might be easier to score 30 in the NBA than in the EuroLeague is that there's more skilled players off on a five to 8 man rotation than there are in the EuroLeague. Just athleticism, skilled scorers, and everything. And so now there's rule changes that make the game more wide open and stuff. But there's also just like a talent level where, uh, there's maybe more talent in the NBA. So a guy like Luka Doncic has 7, 8 guys to pass the ball to throughout a game, and 4 players on the court at one time. But like 7, 8 guys to pass the ball to throughout a game, and then that leads to more open shots for him. It's like so more skilled. That's why one of the reasons I think you're seeing more scoring more on an individual basis on today's NBA than past NBA because there's more skilled players all the way around. So it just leads to more open shots for the top guy because you have to stay home on the other players or whatever. Anyways, that was my thought, and so I share it. And that's all I have to say today. Uh, yeah. Okay. Goodbye.